Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News and Big Ten Network with us. Now, Mike, we've been talking about the NCAA tournament. The brackets are out. They're ready. As a matter of fact, today's play begins in the play-in games, which I don't like that term, play-in. You're in. You're already in. So
the great
got to come up with
the great name. Greg Shaheen came up with the name First Four. Use it. It works.
Yes, great. I like that. First or last. Yes, I agree with that. Mike, looking at, I think the West, the Wild Wild West, is going to be just that. You could probably pick 3 different, maybe 4 different winners in that bracket. It just seems like the most competitive, I guess you could say. I don't want to call it open, but what.
The word I use for that region is the least trustworthy.
Yeah, there you go.
Give me a team in that region that you know what they're going to do, how they're going to show up. Like you're absolutely convinced. Is it Arizona, which lost to the 3 worst teams in the Pac-12 and still managed to win the conference championship? Is it Alabama, which can score on anybody but can't stop you and me, Jim?
Yes, they will. They'll give up 1,000 points.
Yeah, is it Carolina, which lost its championship game to a rival that had a very meager season?
Oh, North Carolina State gets mad because North Carolina doesn't consider them a rival.
Yeah. Well, it's still a rival. Trust me, it's not their main rival, obviously, but they're a rival.
You've got Baylor in there.
What's that?
And you've got Baylor in that.
Baylor. Baylor's just, they're probably a team that I can't say that I don't trust because they're young and they're growing and anything that they do at this stage is kind of a plus. I think they've had a really nice year for a team that's somewhat in transition, but not a team that I look at and genuinely fear. I think they're capable of a really good game, but I don't know that they're capable of 4 of them. So it's just it's a strange region in that way.
I've got Alabama losing to I picked an upset prior to that. I picked Grand Canyon upsetting St. Mary's just because that's that wild 5-12 matchup. And Alabama, I don't know enough about Grand Canyon's offense other than it's one of the Drew boys.
Yep.
And I'm like, you know what? Alabama's just done some funky things this year, man. And so I don't trust them. They're the least trustable team out there in that bracket.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
I don't know. There's no one that I look at and I go, oh yeah, look out for them. There's not. North Carolina, like you said, they just lost to North Carolina State. And a week and a half ago, no one would have thought North Carolina was going to be a 1 seed, I don't think.
I think that Tennessee kind of gave that back to them. And then there wasn't, because of Arizona's struggles against the lesser teams, there wasn't really anybody to hand it back to. And so it was like a hot potato and Carolina was holding it when the buzzer went off. But Grand Canyon, interesting team. They have a young man named Tyan Grant Foster, who is a terrific player that some people are talking about as an NBA draft prospect. Be one of those guys that maybe America gets introduced to. And, I think St. Mary's is a challenge for them. They're a very consistent team. They don't make a lot of mistakes, but it's not an elite team. Certainly they don't have a truckload of high major players at St. Mary's. They've got some. I mean, Aiden Mahaney is certainly a high major player, but they have some, but not a full rotation of them. They overachieve in a lot of their games. So I think certainly Grand Canyon is capable of winning that game. And Alabama is, as I said, they are a really terrific offensive team. They are hard to stop. Mark Sears going downhill, that is a hard deal to deal with, but they are one of the worst defensive teams in this tournament. Kentucky's bad, but in terms of defense, but Alabama struggles even more than they do.
What about a team like Nebraska?
Nebraska's an interesting. I was watching them on Saturday in their conference tournament game against Illinois, and I was watching, especially the first half. and watching the rotations that Fred Hoiberg was using, it dawned on me for the first time, especially I think it was seeing them in person, that it was almost like playing three teams at once. Because he changes, Keisei Tominaga is out there and it's one team, and then he takes him out and puts somebody else out there, and they're different. They're not quite as dynamic offensively, but they're more conventional offensively. And then he puts Rinkmast at the top of the key, and nobody knows how to deal with that, because if Rink is on, then he can make plays on the move. He can dribble the ball and get deep in the lane, and not very many centers do that, especially not from the top of the key position. Or he can make out of that, or if you sag off him, he can make that shot. So it's almost like playing three different teams at once. Against Texas A&M, which has Wade Taylor IV, a tremendously dynamic guard who can change every game he's in. Hasn't changed all of them, but when he's on, as he was on, I think it was Friday against Kentucky, you've got problems.
North Carolina and Michigan State are a very early possibility in the second round. Is Michigan State good enough to take out North Carolina?
Honestly, I don't expect Michigan State to be good enough to take out Mississippi State.
That's true. And Mississippi State's got a good run.
Mississippi State, physically powerful, not the crispest offense, but the physical power is really something, and that forces Mady Sissoko into more minutes, and the more minutes he plays, the less effective Michigan State's offense is. So I don't love the matchup for the Spartans, and I picked Mississippi State to go on. There's always the Izzo factor, and that's the one thing that you look at and you say, maybe it happens now, but we've been waiting for the Izzo factor to kick in on this team for 4 months. And I get it, you get exhausted waiting, and maybe it happens, but I don't bet on this stuff, but I'm not betting my pick on that. I'm not betting my pick on all of a sudden the light bulb goes on, and this team that has been extremely inconsistent now starts to play consistently terrific basketball. I did think they played well in the Purdue game on Friday. I was there, and I thought they played well. And they could have won the game, but there's too few of those episodes for me to feel good about it.
Do you fill out after doing all the work that you do with these brackets? Do you actually fill one out or two and put in and just say, all right, let's see how we do?
I do fill it out because there's a demand for it online. People want to see those brackets as they look at their picks. I do fill it out more quickly. Like, you're still agonizing. I don't have the opportunity to agonize. The more you agonize, the more potential viewers you miss. So mine is done very quickly. I look at it now and I don't have a ton of buyer's remorse. St. Mary's, you mentioned, that's one. I put them in the Sweet 16 because of the Alabama level of trust, but I could see St. Mary's losing that first game and do have a concern about that. But not a lot of buyer's remorse on this. I like what I put there. My final four is UConn, Arizona, Kentucky, Tennessee. I don't have buyer's remorse on Arizona because, as I said, I don't trust anybody in that region. I was going to have to pick somebody that I didn't believe in because that was all I was given to choose from by the committee. So I picked them. But I believe that the two teams that are best equipped, best constructed to win the championship are UConn and, to a much, much, much lesser extent, Tennessee. And that's who I have playing in the championship game, with UConn winning it. I don't love picking a repeat because I know how rare it is. I'm one of the few Americans who can tell you every program that's ever done it back-to-back. I know that stat or factoid or whatever off the top of my head. But they are just, relative to the field, they are so complete in a year when very few are.
And it's coming after they lost, 2 or 3 starters?
3 starters and 75% of their scoring. 75%. And I got questioned when we selected Danny Hurley as the national coach of the year. Well, he had a number one. They lost 75% of their team and came back and became the best team. How many times have you seen that happen in history? I think maybe a couple of times under Wooden because, but Bill Walton's gone. I mean, excuse me, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's gone, but here comes
some
Sidney
guy
Wicks.
named Bill.
And then Sidney Wicks is gone. Well, here comes Bill Walton. So it happened then, but not many times since.
Yeah, and I'm sure Sam Gilbert was happy to see that as well. For those of you who know who Sam Gilbert is. But yeah, that for everybody who complains about, especially like Indiana, well, they lost this. Man, everybody lost. Everybody lost players off of their teams. Everybody had different, some up to 10 new faces on their team. So that's going to be that's just how it is from now on. So there's no point in arguing about that. Switching subjects real quick, Indiana has to look into the portal now. They have already made it known that if they were to get an invite to the NIT, they weren't going to go, that they're going to focus on recruiting because obviously they didn't focus on it well enough last year. So this year they've already determined that that's what they're going to be doing. There's been some names battered around, but do you think it's better for a team to just pack it in and look towards next year, or to keep playing in this day and age when you don't even know how many of those guys are going to be with you on the next roster?
I think you can do both of them at once. I don't think they're exclusive of each other. If you take the tournament unseriously enough to consider not accepting the offer, you certainly can take the tournament unseriously enough to practice at 3:00, to do a normal game prep, but not necessarily to burn countless hours watching game tape, and you go play. You can do that if that's what you wish, and spend the time that you might have spent on an NCAA tournament prep, which is nearly 24/7. You spend that on the portal. But from what I saw relative to the portal yesterday, some of the people that I follow who do college basketball were complaining about the portal opening yesterday and how awful it was that it opens on the day that the tournament field is announced. And I'm like, if you guys weren't reporting this stuff, nobody would know. Like almost nobody that's any good at all announced they were in transfer portal yesterday. Doug McDaniel and a cast of guys who averaged 1 point a game is basically who went into the portal yesterday. Like if nobody reported it, nobody would know and nobody would care. So it doesn't matter that it opens the day after Selection Sunday, because most of the players that are worth getting
are still playing.
Are probably still playing. Yeah, that's right.
Yes. And a lot of people are paying attention to this as well. So you can easily sneak in there. And that's probably why. Well, that's not why, but we haven't seen anybody from Indiana enter the portal, and even though they're not going to be playing anymore. So, but that'll take care of itself. What does Indiana have to do? We know that they have to get guards, but they're not really going to have to get guards. I mean, I'm of the opinion that Kel'el Ware will not be at Indiana next year, simply because he played well enough throughout he got better as the season went along. He was pretty consistent. He had some downs after good games. We saw that, but NBA drafts on potential, man. And when you're 7 foot tall, you're potentially good.
Well, I will say, Jim, that if he is not assured that he's a first round selection, then he should play another year. Absolutely. If he is, and you can have a pretty good idea. And honestly, I have not seen Khalil's name often in mock drafts. There may be some out there, and if you are a first round pick, then it makes sense to go in most cases, because either you're really not quite good enough, but you can get that one-time thing and then eventually play, I don't know, a decade or so overseas. And certainly with Khalil's game, he's going to be able to play overseas at minimum for a very long time, making a very significant amount of money. And so if you can get that, if you're not, there was a kid for Syracuse named Tyler Ennis about a decade ago. And he was being projected in all the mocks as a first-round pick. And usually my feeling about a player is make sure you're ready to play in the league before you go. But Tyler Ennis, I was like, go. You're not good enough. They haven't figured it out yet. Go get that money, because when they figure out you're not good enough, they'll already have paid you multiple millions of dollars, because the kid wasn't an NBA player. I knew it from the first 3 times I watched him. He wasn't a long-term NBA player. So he went, I think he was taken 18th or 20th or whatever. He didn't last, as I suspected, and he got the money. And that was better off, especially in those days when there was no NIL. That was better off than staying at Syracuse and eventually them figuring out you're not good enough while you're wearing an orange uniform instead of wearing a uniform of an NBA team. But that's pretty rare. Most of the time, if you're good enough, if you have a chance to be good enough, you should go when you're ready to play in the league, because that's when you really make it big.